Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to the last session of the Parent Involvement Conference. I'm letting people in as we speak. You are in the session A Whole New World by Debbie Martin. So if you don't know Debbie, here's a little bit about her. Debbie Martin has 27 years of experience as a school-based speech pathologist, with a majority of those years serving ECSE 5th grade students. And see, let me pause for a second. Debbie, if I say something wrong or mispronounce something, let me know. This is a new world for me as well.
Okay, you're good. And I'll explain what ECSE is in a second.
Perfect. For the past 2 years, she has served as an education specialist for the speech pathology assistant technology and is the parent contact for the schools served by the ESC Region 15 and here in San Angelo. She is passionate about helping SLPs, teachers and staff that serve our students with special needs, and likes to help parents advocate for their students. Thank you for everything that you do, Debbie, and thank you for presenting and sharing information today with us.
Absolutely. Well, good morning, ladies. How are y'all?
Good. Good morning.
Good. So I'm going to just do a brief overview of special education. When Monica mentioned ECSE, special ed is known for using lots of acronyms, as are other areas in education, but ECSE stands for Early Childhood Special Ed. So that's the programming that students who are 3 through the year that they turn 6, if they qualify, they have access to early childhood special ed. So, and like Monica said, the majority of my experience in the school district was with elementary school kids. I love the little bitties. I think it takes a special person to do secondary kids, and that's not my area of specialty. There's just something about the little ones that they grab my heart. So, well, let's get started. I'm gonna share my PowerPoint with y'all. Let me see. Can y'all see the PowerPoint, A Whole New World?
Yes.
Okay, good deal. Minimize this. And at any point, if y'all have questions, please do not hesitate to ask your question. I want this to be as interactive as possible, and that sometimes is difficult on a Zoom. So let's get started. And like Monica said, I'm a speech pathologist by trade. I have never taught in a classroom. I have great respect for teachers that do choose to go into that field. I think it definitely takes a special person, and I loved my job as the SLP. It allowed me to be more like a grandparent. If you think about a parent and a grandparent relationship with kids, you know, the parents have them the majority of the time. So that's like the teachers. And then the grandparent gets to come pick them up, take them, play with them, do fun things with them. That's my role on the campus. And then I take them back to the parent. So I thoroughly enjoyed that. So let's start at the beginning. So there is a term called child find. And this means that the schools are mandated to locate and find children with disabilities regarding within, it says their jurisdiction. That's basically the boundaries of that district. This includes children who are in private schools within that boundary of that district, as well as homeschooled. So even though, you know, your child may be in private school, the public school still has an obligation to identify and possibly provide some level of service to your student if your student is found to have a disability. Within that district boundaries, the private schools that are within that those boundaries, that's the district that would provide the services. So just to give you an example of what that means, I live outside of San Angelo and I actually live in Wall School District. But if I chose to send my kids to Ambleside is within San Angelo city limits. So if I wanted to have my child tested, then San Angelo Independent School District, because Ambleside sits within their school boundaries, they would be responsible for providing that evaluation. At any point, parents can request testing for their child. Preferably, the districts like to have written notice. And the district has to respond within, I believe it's 15 days, whether or not they're going to do that testing, or districts can say no, but rarely do they ever say no to a parent request. So, any idea what these particular numbers represent? Does anybody have a guess?
The ages we can serve the student. Well, I know
Very good.
for
Go
the
ahead, Monica.
for other programs, like the migrant program that we serve our migrant children from 3 to 21. So that's what the first thing that came to my mind.
Exactly, you're correct. So we serve kids from 3 to 21. Every child within those ages, and they actually say 22, they're eligible for a free and appropriate public education. So remember when I said we're kind of known for using acronyms, FAPE, that's what you hear a lot of people say. You know, we have to provide FAPE, and that just means that free, appropriate public education. Now, there is one exception to this 3 to 21, and that is students who are born with a visual impairment, they're deaf or hard of hearing, or have deaf blindness. They are eligible to receive services from the school district from birth. So those services would be from a teacher for the visually impaired, or a teacher for the deaf and hard of hearing. And those services would start as soon as possible. And then transition into the school district once they meet that 3-year-old age. So for child find, your main contact is going to be Mandy right here. So, and I've given Monica, there's a copy of the handout that that she can share with y'all if she hasn't already. So
I'll share the presentation. I'll email everyone the presentation and handouts.
okay, great. So those are your contacts, and I would call Mandy first. She is the main contact. I'm kind of secondary. So there is a document that if you start the special ed process for your student, the document is called the Notice of Procedural Safeguards. And these are the protections for both you and your child during the evaluation and the IEP process. And I want to show y'all. Can you see the website SpedText that's coming up, Monica? Or so, okay.
It's still loading.
It's loading. This website, and we'll talk about it a little bit later also, but I just wanted to show y'all that on this website, they have the Notice of Procedural Safeguards, and it is in 24 different languages. So you can go download this document in any of those languages. So I know in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, this comes in handy as they have upwards of 40 different languages spoken. So they're constantly translating this document into other languages. Okay. All right. So if you have your child tested for special education, if they show them to be eligible, it is going to be under one of these handicapping conditions. And so these are the ones that are recognized in the state of Texas. And we all know that Texas is, we tend to have our own way of doing things. So in other states, there is a developmental disorder that they use for the younger kids. The one that Texas uses is this non-categorical early childhood, NCEC. But your handicapping conditions could be autism, deaf blindness, deaf and hard of hearing, emotional disturbance, intellectual disability, multiple disabilities. So if your student has, I believe it's more than 2 handicapping conditions, they would also put that multiple disabilities designation on them. Orthopedic impairment, other health impairment, that category is for students with ADHD, seizure disorders, any other more medical based issue that they may have can fall under that other health impairment. And that requires a trip to your doctor, paperwork from your doctor for that designation. Specific learning disability, speech or language impairment, and then traumatic brain injury. That's obviously any injury to the brain that's going to cause issues for that student potentially for the rest of their life. And then last but not least, visual impairment. So I just wanted to point out to y'all that when you request testing, and it is the student's initial evaluation, it's to be completed within 45 school days from the date that the parent signs consent. There are a few exceptions to this rule. If the student is absent more than 3 days during the evaluation period, those days are then added on at the end of the evaluation period. So, you know, if you have a child who gets COVID or gets the flu or has to have their tonsils out and they're out for, you know, 5 to 10 days, those 5 to 10 days are added on to that 45th day just to allow for enough time for evaluation to occur. If your child is referred as it gets closer to the end of the school year, at a certain cutoff date, and I believe it's 35 days left in the school year, that evaluation will be due to be completed in the following school year. So the fall of the next school year. Does that make sense?
So I have a question.
Okay.
So my child is dyslexic. And so
Okay.
when I signed my consent for them to like test and stuff, and then they had to like evaluate, and I felt like it took a whole year to finally, but is it all like the same? Like, what's the like?
So I know there has been huge changes with dyslexia in the state of Texas, and those both in the evaluation process. And I believe dyslexia is now falling back under special education. So if it was prior to this year, it may have taken longer because it was outside the, I'll say the guidelines, if you will, of special ed. But dyslexia is coming back under special ed.
Okay, because we did that with my first child, but then COVID happened and kept my child home for an entire year. But I
Right.
noticed the same signs and struggles with another child and I contacted the school, and so we're going through that process. So I let them know the beginning of 3rd grade, and so now we're going into 4th grade. And he's gotten some help, but I'm still wanting to, I just didn't
Yeah.
know, the process sometimes seems very long.
Yes, yes. And I know especially with dyslexia, evaluation this year has been, I'll just say turned upside down. There's been big changes within the dyslexia world. Mandy Holscher, who I mentioned earlier on the Child Find slide, she is our dyslexia contact here at Region 15. I will share with Monica when we update. We have a list of all of the personnel in special ed in the areas that they are responsible for. So I will share that with you when we update. We've had personnel changes over the summer, and so I will get that updated and I'll send it to you so you can email to the parents.
Okay, thanks, Debbie. And I just thought, as a parent, and I'm listening and I'm looking at all, the conditions and things like that, and the testing, and sometimes districts have like one person doing all the testing or doing all of this. And so as a parent, I might get frustrated because it did take a whole year before my child received services, but now I'm starting to see like, well, maybe there's a lot that they have to do.
Just looking at this list, and I know for our small and rural districts, it has the potential to be more difficult because they don't have, they may not have a full-time LSSP, and that's a licensed specialist in school psychology. And that person is involved with the autism testing. They're involved with the emotional disturbance testing. They could be involved, excuse me, in some of these other areas as well. And if a district doesn't have a full-time person, or they share an LSSP, like in an example of like a co-op. So there's a co-op for the special ed services for many small and rural schools. So they have one LSSP who has to serve 6 or 7 districts. But even in those instances, when your child is referred for special ed testing, they still fall under that 45 school day rule. So, there's a certain amount of hustling that needs to occur to get that done. All right. As I mentioned, there are many, many, many acronyms. I like to call it alphabet soup. So here are some of the common ones in Texas. We have an ARD, and that stands for Admission, Review, and Dismissal. This is what we call the actual meetings for special ed in Texas. Now, I believe in every other state, they call it an IEP meeting. And the IEP stands for Individualized Education Program. A lot of times you'll hear that term used in Texas also, but usually that the IEP is the goals and objectives that the special ed personnel are proposing to work on with your student. You'll see an FIIE, and that stands for Full Individual and Initial Evaluation. So that is that very first evaluation that a student has for special ed. And then after that, it's an FIE, just full individual evaluation. And then TEA, it's not just a lot of times when I see TEA, my brain reads T. And who doesn't love a good glass of sweet iced tea? But for us, TEA is the Texas Education Agency. And there's some really good resources there for parents. That's the Texas Education Agency is who basically governs all the schools in Texas. So. All right, and I will have Monica share with you guys there. I've found a list by Mrs. D's Corner, and I'm not sure what state she lives in, but she has a great list of a lot of acronyms that we do use in Texas. The O&M over here, orientation and mobility, that is for students with visual impairment. We have a great O&M guy here, Vance Langford. He teaches children with visual impairments to use canes to walk. He teaches them how to navigate around the campus. So I'll share this list with you, but just keep in mind some of the acronyms are not used in our great state of Texas. So if your child is eligible for special ed, your school will schedule that ARD meeting to review the evaluation and discuss the services that they feel like your child needs. So in my case, as a speech pathologist, I would recommend speech therapy for your kid. Excuse me. So the members of this committee are your gen ed teacher that serves your student in the classroom, the speech pathologist when appropriate, a special ed teacher when appropriate, an administrator, and this was usually on most campuses, it's the principal. And the most important person on that ARD committee is you, the parent. Speaking from experience, we love when our parents attend ARD meetings. It helps the team to be an actual team, and it allows us to know how the student is at home, see if there's carryover of skills that we're working on, and just get input from the parents. So we really do appreciate when you attend the ARD meetings. And students are invited to attend as well. That typically happens at the secondary level when they hit middle school. Definitely in high school, they are invited to attend their meeting as well, because the school wants input from the student. So here are just a few little things regarding an ARD. So the schools are required you or the school can call an ARD or request an ARD anytime throughout the year, and then it's on a mutually agreed upon time. So, I mean, you couldn't call the school district and say, I want to have an ARD at, 7 o'clock on a Thursday night. The time needs to be agreed upon. The schools are required to give you written notice 5 days prior to the ARD meeting. So I really encourage you as the parent, if an ARD meeting is scheduled, and they're typically scheduled during the teachers' conference period. So if you can't meet on that date or time, it's okay for you guys to ask to reschedule the ARD. If you could give them some options, that would help expedite the rescheduling process. And if you don't respond to any of the notices that are sent home, they will have the meeting without you. We don't like to do that, but those meetings need to be held, like I said, once per school year. And so if it's the time for your student's annual ARD, the district needs to get that completed so services can continue. Here's a document called the Parent's Guide to the ARD Process, and it's on that SpedTech's website. that we looked at earlier. You will get a copy of this when your child is referred for special ed. But like the other document, it is translated into 24 different languages. So if you need a different language other than English, you can get it here. Most districts have English and Spanish translations for these documents. But if you need another language, I encourage you to reach out to SpedTech's website to get that. So any questions about kind of the quick overview of special ed?
Debbie, I had a question.
Okay,
Can testing occur without parents requesting it?
yes. So the school district, if they have a concern with a student, they see some difficulty in an area, whether it's academic, it could be just speech. The district can request the testing. Now that testing still has to have parent permission, okay? And the parents ultimately, you have the right to agree or disagree to that testing, okay? And when we look at an let me back up. When we're looking at evaluating a student, the school district and personnel are charged with looking at every area of suspected disability. So for example, I might look at a student for an articulation disorder. They can't say their R's. You know, they sound like Elmer Fudd, for those of us that remember Bugs Bunny cartoons. And you know, the diagnostician may look at a specific learning disability. Let's say the student struggles with reading skills. So we're concerned with 2 areas. So our request would include both of those areas to be evaluated.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense, because I was thinking as an educator, I'm sure, you know, teachers or whomever it is working with the child will notice, you know, that there is areas where the student needs help. So I was
Yes.
wondering if that could occur without a parent's permission. And then I know too, sometimes, you know, back when I was a teacher, there was a lot of times you try to contact the parent and they don't respond. So I can understand how the art happens without the parent sometimes, because as educators, you're trying to serve that child and give them the education they need. But sometimes you just kind of got to move on without the parent. But
Right.
I think it's good to inform the parent and let them know that this is going to happen with their child.
Absolutely. And I know, you know, obviously I can't speak for everybody in education, but I would say for the majority of the people, if we had to have an ARD meeting without the parent present, and then the parent called and said, oh my goodness, I couldn't get off work. Can you meet with me and let's talk about this? I know that most people would be more than willing and happy to meet with the parents and go over the paperwork, or even schedule another ARD meeting to go over the
That's
paperwork.
good. Yeah, that would be
Yes.
good, because you just have to make it convenient for the parent too, because they're always working or they're busy, you know, and so
Yeah.
so I think that's important, because, and I kind of speak from experience. My oldest child, he's a grown man now, but he was diagnosed with dyslexia early on when he first started school, and so he was in special ed. What they did is modify some of his lessons to where he could, you know, keep up with the reading lessons and stuff like that. But I did want to share, because, you know, Monica said something about, you know, her child having dyslexia. As long as you work with them, they do outgrow it. And my son has, and I know that it took several years to get him to the point where he was trained to see, you know, he was seeing like B's backwards, they were D's, you know, things like that. So I had to learn how to see things the way he saw them, so I could help him as a parent. So I think that special ed that they provided for him, special ed classes, modified lessons, this and that really helped him. And it helped him stay, what am I trying to say? Stay where he needed to be, you know, kind of move on and stay with his class as far as like working on the lessons that they were working on and him not staying behind, I guess what I'm trying to say. But
Right.
eventually I noticed as he got older, things got better and he was able to, I guess, you know, what we did was train his brain to start
Mhm.
looking at things differently than what
Right.
he saw them. But I can only, I know it was really hard at first. It was tough when he couldn't read, you know, and he would try and it was real frustrating. So special ed and the modification and all those things that we learned were really helpful and he finally outgrew it.
Mhm.
So
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that he had a successful time with this in special ed and it was beneficial to him.
yes, it was.
Yeah.
You know, sorry, Debbie, I know.
No, go ahead, Monica.
And it's really hard also for, I think, parents, seeing your child go through these struggles and then the meetings and what, so I myself even struggled and many tears were on my end as well. But I also have an aunt, who has I have a cousin who has a certain disability or syndrome. And one of the questions I asked, like, what are your concerns or what, and so what would you like the school to have done? And she even mentioned, more parent support, because she really struggled even at home trying to help him. And so, and I got that because I struggle and my son was dyslexic. And so with the homework and things like that, and I didn't know how to help him. And especially during COVID, I was texting and calling the dyslexic specialist there on the campus, like, can you remind me of how am I supposed to help him? Like, what are some strategies that I could do? Because I am losing it. And so she would share with me. And so I think the parent support is needed.
Yes. And I will say from, the job that I have now, as much as we are here as an education service center to support the school districts, we're as equally supportive of parents. And we're here to answer questions for parents, direct them to resources. So, I would love for parents to reach out to me personally for issues that I can help them with. And if I can't help you with it, I will definitely direct you to the person who can help you in those areas. But I know as a parent also, my youngest daughter has a lot of the characteristics of dyslexia. She was tested in the school district many years ago. Didn't technically, we'll say, qualify for dyslexia, but they put her in the dyslexia program for her last 2 years in elementary school. And like Virginia, it helped her tremendously. Now she's about to graduate from ASU. And I just, in the last couple of years, finally see that she enjoys to read for pleasure. And so that for her is a big thing. For for me to see as a parent that she enjoys reading and will read for pleasure, because I know it's difficult for her. So all right, let's go over some resources that are out there for parents. So the first one, like I've already mentioned, is SpedText. SpedText is housed out of the ESC Region 10, and it's there to support parents with children with disabilities. They are your go-to for if you have a complaint, you can call SpedText. There is a phone number on their site. They have lots of great resources. So let's take a look at those real quick. Like I said, here's that phone number, and you can also email them. You can create a sped text login and just have access to all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, just scrolling through this, you could probably spend several hours just looking at all of this information here. So that's sped text. All right, the legal framework. So I struggled with how to really explain what the legal framework is, but it is basically the state and federal requirements for special ed, and it's housed out of Region 18. There is a little video here that goes over what it looks like. I'm not going to show that to you. You guys can go watch that. But when you go to the legal framework website, you can hover over Region 15, and that's the region that we're in. And our contacts will pop up for the legal framework. And so I can tell you that the contact here is Mandy Holscher. Again, she's our big winner for contacts. And Connie Neal. Connie Neal is our special ed director here at Region 15. She's our other contact for the legal framework. So let's take a quick look at it. And you'll see here that they have links to those documents that we've already talked about that are housed over on the SpedTex website. But here, if I hover over Region 15, you see Mandy's contact information as well as Connie Neal's. Let's take a quick look at what the framework looks like. So if you have a question, let's see. Let's say you have a question about what a speech and language impairment looks like. So if you click on that, here are the requirements. So remember how I mentioned the child must be assessed in all areas of suspected disability. Here is the, I guess, legal citation of where this statement is pulled from. So here's who would do the testing. And then in order for your child to qualify as a student with a speech or language impairment, it must adversely affect their educational performance, and it must be in an area, stuttering, it's also called fluency, articulation, that's how you say your sounds, language impairment. Language impairments are very broad. It could be, you know, speaks in really just 2-word phrases as opposed to a whole sentence, doesn't understand pronouns, doesn't have subject-verb agreement. A lot of those things that if you think back to things you were taught in English class when you were in school in that subject, that kind of falls under language impairment. And then a voice impairment might be like vocal nodules, where you have a real raspy voice. Voice impairments aren't real common in the school district. Those do require the student going to an ear, nose, and throat doctor to make sure there's not some anatomy issue that's causing the student's voice to be impaired. Let's go back to the main page, talking about ARD meetings, all right here. Consent for initial evaluation, consent for services, consent for reeval. So it's basically just the laws that the school districts have to abide by when doing all of these things for special ed. So, any question about the legal framework? Okay. So, next is Partners Resource Network, also called PRN. They are a nonprofit agency that serves children and youth from 0 to 26. We are under the PEN project. They have the whole state broken into 4 parent training and information centers. And so Region 15 is served by the PEN project, and our representative is Jamie Thomas, and she lives in Abilene. But the PEN project and PRN also does a lot of trainings for parents. They are a good resource. They have these links to webinars, online courses, youth leadership, all kinds of stuff. So, you know, Monica, when you were saying parent resources, there's a lot out there for parents. The key is just knowing where it is and where to find it and how to access it. So
you would be our contact person.
yes, I would be happy. I mean, that's part of my job. So in Texas, under special ed, we have networks of people. And so one of the networks is school, family, community engagement. And so for Region 15, I am the contact person for that school, family, and community engagement. And so part of that is being the parent contact for Region 15. So I'm somewhat of your go-to. Now, by all means, I don't have all the answers, but I will find the answers or point you to the person who has the answers. Texas Project First is another great resource page. I love that it was created by parents and that the information is divided by age groups. Because let's be honest, a 3 to 5 year old has very different needs than our 18 or 18 plus students. Texas Parent to Parent. This is different than the one that we just covered, but it's still for families of children with children or adults with disabilities. Texas Parent to Parent has a statewide conference, which I would love to encourage you all to go to, but it starts today. So maybe look at the 2023 annual conference. I love that they have weekly support groups. They have one in English and one in Spanish, and they're done via Zoom. So, you know, if you needed to do lunch at 11 and jump on a Zoom parent support group, or take your lunch at 1. So these click here to register will take you directly to the registration for the meeting.
That is very cool. I like that.
Yes.
And those in the meetings are free, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I had heard a family member that wanted more parent training or support. The district that she was with had sent her to a conference. And so there's that, you said there's a statewide conference. Do you know where that was held?
Let me see.
And like if a parent is interested in attending, is there a fee or does the school provide that support for the parent to attend?
Well, I'm guessing there probably is a fee. And.
Because I know for our Title I school districts, we have a parent conference and it's going to be held in Frisco, Texas this year in December. And it has been held virtually, but this year they're going back to in person. But I know that if you're in a Title I school district, which a lot of our school districts in Region 15 are, they send parents. And so they provide the support, they provide the hotel room, the meals, everything. And so even for our migrant program, there's a conference that parents can go to as well. And the program will, if the district allows it, they can send the parents and the program will pay for it.
Well,
So
and I
that
would
was
like,
my question, like, so does SPED have that? Like, do they provide that support for the parents?
in the districts, to be honest, I'm not real sure. But it definitely is one of those things that I would ask. Because if you don't ask, the answer is automatically no. So, you know, you could ask and maybe the answer would be yes. Let's see what the fee is for this one this weekend. And I would definitely say, you know, there could be the potential that Region 15, if we had a parent that wanted to attend a conference, that now don't hold me to this, but it's definitely, like I said, I would be willing to ask, can we send, you know, a parent to the Texas Parent to Parent Conference and see if that support is available within ESC Region 15. Okay, scroll down. Well, they offer scholarships. They offer childcare. I like all their info, but where's the price? Okay, there we go. So early bird pricing 300. So, you know, it's definitely one of those things, like I said, I would ask the district, I would, you know, contact the ESC, just to help, you know, see if there's financial help, and the fact that they have scholarships within this organization is good as well. So. Okay, did not mean to do that. So Region 15 resources. These are resources that I just recently, within the last probably 3 months, stumbled upon. There are some great newsletters as well as calendars that you can access, and then there is a newsletter. And I don't think I have these linked. I don't. I may have this one. Here are the newsletters. But then let me show you on Region 15's website. If you click on parents, hover over parents rather, and click on newsletter, it'll take you to these resources. So just to show you what the calendars look like. So you have access to all of this. So let's look at May's calendar. It's hard to believe, Monica, that we're about to wrap these up into 2021, 2022 year. It's weird to me to say 2023. Okay, why didn't that open? There we go. So, and I believe these are broken down by age groups. So, the thing that I love about these is it just gives you little activities that you can do with your children each day, just to work on those skills that are academic in nature, but without really working on true reading skills or whatever. So I have, excuse me, a parent email list that I would love for you guys to get on, share with other parents. I just share parent trainings as they come to me from the PIN project, from the state level, from outside the region, within the region. Just try to share as much info with parents. So if you are interested, you can click on this link when Monica shares the handout with you and get on that list. It's called a listserv. So, all right. So I'll just end with questions. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
And sometimes it's information overload, but you'll be getting the documents, the presentation, and then the link to the recording. So you can always go back and listen to it. But if you have any questions, feel free, Debbie, you can give her a call, email her, and she will be more than happy to help you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I appreciate y'all joining me this morning. And I look forward to hearing from you. If you have any questions, and hopefully I'll see your name pop up on the email listserv, and can start sharing info with you. So, and I believe, Monica, you may have a door prize, maybe?
I do. I think Macy left, which was a parent, but I put her in the spinner. So we can, if she wins, we will notify her. And she did win. We will let her know that she won.
Yay.
Thank y'all all again for attending this week. And I hope you got a lot of good information. And again, feel free to contact any of the presenters that shared information. And I'll have a good weekend. Enjoy. Maybe see you on next year.
Yes, thank
Bye.
Bye.